Well, hello everybody. It's been quite a while since we've done a YouTube video. Winter was dreary and we didn't get out much, and now we're all stuck inside, so there's not really much to post about. I'm going to make this bread video. Our store did not have any bread, but remarkably it did have flour. So I developed this recipe yesterday, in fact, and it makes a wonderful, squishy, beautiful sandwich loaf. Amazing flavor. It's tender. It's probably one of my most favorite bread recipes I've ever done. So this is how I make it, and here are the ingredients. This will make 2 loaves. So we got 1,000 grams or 1 kilogram of all-purpose flour. We have 56 grams of sugar, a tablespoon of yeast. I know that's a lot of yeast. You could probably cut that in half. I like the yeasty flavor. 22 grams of salt. And then in here we have 250 grams of whole milk, and then what was it, 400 grams of water. No, that's not right. 250 grams of milk and 450 grams of water, and I've heated it up, and it's about 106, 105. And then we have bourbon that actually doesn't go into the bread. It's for me to drink while I'm sequestered with 3 kids. So anyway, I'm going to add the sugar to the water and milk mixture, and then I'm going to put the yeast on it. I'm going to let it bloom for about 10-15 minutes. It's going to bubble up and get frothy and nice. Salt will go into the flour, and when I come back, I will show you how I do the pincer method and show you how I mix this dough. So here's the yeast mixture. I let it sit for 20 minutes exactly while I went outside and got some rare sun. So you can see the yeast is alive and thriving. This is one of the reasons why I opted to use sugar in this recipe, because I really want the yeast to really be active, wake up, make a lot of bubbles. And of course, you know, American style sandwich bread is slightly sweet. And so this is for the kids. I mean, I made 2 loaves yesterday, and this is what we have left of the 2 loaves. So 1/2 loaf. You know, these boys eat a lot and they go through a lot. So now I'm gonna try to figure out a way to show you guys how I knead this using the pincer method. And this is the method I learned from Ken Forkish. He's a famous baker here in Portland. He has some wonderful bakeries. He has a great pizza place, some of the best pizza you can ever come by. And he uses this technique called the pincer method. If you're really interested in getting into bread baking and learning how to make different types of bread, like rustic bread and crusty French bread, I would get his book. It's called Flour, Water, Yeast, Salt, and it's pretty good. And definitely check out his offerings from his bakery and his pizzeria. And they always say, well, you know, New York pizza's the best because of the water. Well, Portland has just as good, if not better, water. Comes right off the glacier melt of the mountain into the Bull Run Reservoir. It's pure, and Ken's pizza is just as good, if not better, than New York. So I'm going to try to do this one-handed. Forgive me and the camera stabilization. So I'm going to pour the milk, water, yeast, sugar in with the flour and the salt. I'm going to set you down here, because initially what I'm just going to do is I'm going to stir it with, I'm going to use this, here, I got a perfect silicone spatula here. And I'm going to stir it to kind of get it all incorporated. This is a very wet dough. Wet doughs tend to be springier and fluffier and a general nice texture, but they're a pain in the butt to work with initially. So we're going to get this going, and then I'll show you the pincer method. Okay, so I've stirred it around with the spatula, got it mostly incorporated, made sure there's no flour in the bottom. So this is called the pincer method. Wet hands, it's still going to stick to my fingers, but it helps. And you just go like this, you pinch it, right? It's the pincer method. And you pick it up, put it over itself, That's called a turn. It doesn't look that tidy right now because the gluten hasn't fully formed. Rotate the bowl 90 degrees, pinch, 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 and this mixes all the ingredients together. And a turn, just like that. And a turn. So this dough actually comes together quite quickly. So what I'm going to do is do a turn like this. And for the next hour and a half, every half hour, I'm going to do a turn or a flip or however you want to call it. And what you do is you take one end of the dough and you pull it and fold it on itself like that. And you do it for all four corners. And it looks sloppy now. Of course, I'm doing it one-handed. But you're going to want to do this. I'm going to clean my hand off. I'm going to let this sit just how it is. And then every 20 to 30 minutes for the next 90 minutes, I'm going to do a turn. So we get 3 more additional turns after this. And then I'm going to let it sit probably for another hour, and it's going to puff up nice. And the turns really help build the gluten. So we're going to have a really nice, pillowy, fluffy dough. It's going to smell great. And then we'll be ready to divide it in half, form it into loaves, put it in a loaf pan, and then let it proof in the loaf pans, and then bake them off. So this whole thing takes probably 4 hours or so, but you know, your work will be rewarded, and you'll have the best bread you've ever had in your life for sandwiches. So stay tuned. The next clip will be after I've done all 3 turns, and we're ready to form it into 2 balls and put it into the loaf pan. Okay, so I did the 3 turns in the first 90 minutes, and then I let it sit. So this is approximately 2 hours after I mixed the dough. So did the 3 turns in 90 minutes, and then 2 hours from mixing the dough. This is what we have. It's very pillowy, it's very sticky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flour my work surface. I'm going to take this out, divide it into 2, and put them in well-greased loaf pans. I'm going to use, right now I have the Kirkland non-stick cooking spray, works really well. And then I'm going to brush the tops of the loaves with just some vegetable oil. So stay tuned. And welcome back to my cluttered countertop. Things will eventually get back to normal. Of course, we always have clutter. So I'm going to turn out the dough here. Nice floured surface. And I'm going to get a little flour to sprinkle on top. It's very sticky. Like I said, it's a wet dough. The wetness of the dough does make for really great texture and a good final product. So, I mean, it's harder, but, you know, the payoff is worth it. So I'm going to form it into a symmetrical shape. I'm just going to take, and let's see what we have to cut it with. Let's take a knife. I'm going to cut it in half. See, it's very bubbly. It's kind of like bubble gum. So I'm going to take each loaf, and you know, these aren't going to look perfect. It's not going to look like something from an artisanal bakery or anything like that. But they're going to be great, and they're going to taste good. So I'm just going to do the... Oh yeah, you can still see the bourbon in the picture. You notice the level has gone down a little bit. But we're all doing okay over here. So I'm just going to roll it up. I want to get it pretty even. Something like that. All right. Now these are going to sit in the loaf pans, and they're going to proof and get really nice and fluffy. And I like to actually gently press and kind of make it even. Kind of like that. Now what I'm going to do is is I'm just going to drizzle a little bit of vegetable oil on the top. And this will help with the saran wrap I'm going to put over it. There we go. So I'm going to do both loaf pans, put saran wrap over it, and let them poof up to probably like this. And then I'm going to put them in a 350 degree oven and bake them for 30 to 45 minutes. I'm always going to keep on checking. I check after 30 minutes. Sometimes I got to do another 10 minutes. But then you'll have loaves ready to go. So I'm going to do the other one. I'm going to get them all wrapped up with the saran wrap. And when I'm ready to put them in, that'll be the next clip. I lied. The next clip is right after I was just forming the loaves. I put both in, kind of patted them down a little bit, and I put the saran wrap over. Of course, they were coated in oil, and now the next clip will be when they're fully puffed up and ready to go in the oven. These have risen for about an hour. It could take you up to 90 minutes or so, but you want them to pretty much double in size, and they're ready to go in the oven. So I'm going to slap these into the oven, and we'll check them out when they get done. Trust me, guys, these this sandwich bread will be awesome, and I know I always say awesome. During these quarantine times, it may be hard to get bread. Sometimes it's hard to get flour, so if you can get the flour and you can't get the bread, try this recipe out. And I'll show you guys this. The last clip will be the finished product. Alright, so here are the loaves. They just came out of the oven. I put them on a wire rack to cool off and not get gummy on the bottom. One neat thing about this recipe with all the grease in the bottom of the pan is it has that texture. It's, you know, it's impregnated with grease. It tastes good, and these are wonderful loaves. So I'm going to let these cool. Please do not cut into them for at least a half hour. So they're going to cool. They were in the oven at 350. I did convection bake, and they were in for 35 minutes. So enjoy your bread, folks. I hope everybody's doing well and staying at home and doing social distancing. And we're going to get through this. And yeah, so it's good. Plant a victory garden if you can. Alright, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good night and stay well.